He was like your biggest fan.
I know. Hey guys, so I know I've shared about my blended family and our dynamics here on my channel before, but today I really wanted to take you all a little deeper into my relationship with my biological father, Stephen Lewis Burke. As you may or may not know, my dad passed away a few years ago, and while I've shared some of his story in the past, I don't think I've ever really gotten into what an interesting and complicated person he was and how I think he really, impacted so much of my life. From my dysfunctional romantic relationships in the past to my relationship with alcohol, both of which you can learn about here in some of the past videos on my channel. And I think learning more about him will really help you all get to know more about the real me. So let's get into it. One of my first memories as a little girl was at 2, seeing my father with another woman, not knowing that they had already separated. So my memory before the age of 2 is not very clear, but as far as like the first memory, normally people's first memories are like, I was laughing or I got carried out of my crib and I was with my family. Mine was a little bit dark and on the traumatic side, I guess. It was very traumatizing to see him. It wasn't like lots of fun memories, I would say, with my dad. My real dad, Stephen Lewis Burke, was born in New York. He basically was raised by his mother and his grandmother. He never met his father, I guess, but from what I know, he lived like that old show called Gossip Girl. He was like that guy, I forgot his name, but the guy that was always picked up in limos and would be dropped off in school in limos. So right then and there, I'm sure you could imagine that my dad didn't live a normal upbringing. He wasn't very close to his mother. From what I know, I never met them because they passed away before I was born, but he loved his grandmother. And actually, my mom told me a lot about how my dad be really mean to his mom, who was she was a dancer. She also was very intuitive, so she was a psychic on the side. So she was a hustler, But as far as a father figure goes, my dad didn't have one. My dad was a fighter. He was very smart, but he never let anyone tell him no, So he just had no shame, really. And he was very expressive with his words. Like, talking to my dad is like talking to, I wouldn't take it as far as Trump, but he is very opinionated. He was a very good attorney back in his day. My dad would always go to the Philippines and he just loved Filipino women. I think he also represented a few firms out there when he was an attorney, but he loves the Asian culture. He was very spicy. He liked long conversations, long dinners. He didn't drink before 5 p.m. And that was his thing, like drinking for him. You couldn't even talk to the guy before 5 p.m. or else you'd get the Steve Burke that no one wants to see. So 5 p.m. or later, and it was those 4 or 5 hour dinners. I'd be like half asleep, falling asleep on the table from jet lag visiting him. And he'd still be talking his head off, actually. So he didn't really like kids. So he would always say to me when I was younger, when my mom would take me there, and to make sure to savor that relationship every year to Thailand when he moved there, he would always tell me, I cannot wait till you're 18 years old. It was, talking to me, especially with all the trauma I dealt with, it was like talking to a wall. I didn't really respond back, right? I was very scared to have an opinion, I think, nor did I have one really. But I remember my dad, forming this relationship with me like I was a business associate, but also a close friend. Like, the love that we had was so unconditional, and it was weird because my mom raised me, yet I felt, but now looking back, it's not like that, but I felt closer to my father because I didn't feel like he didn't have room to judge me, right? After they divorced, my dad basically packed up, left. He moved to the Philippines. Yeah, that was it, really. And then my mom wanted to savor this relationship with him, so I had to travel to Asia every year and be exposed to certain things I shouldn't have been exposed to, most likely. At 2 years old, I experienced that first memory that was kind of traumatizing, but basically I realized that my dad and mom had separated. My dad dated his secretary, had a baby. I just officially met her about 3 years ago when Matt and I got engaged. Now I have a half sister whose name is Ina. So after my dad and mom divorced, then he left his secretary girlfriend. He fled to the Philippines. Then from the Philippines, he made home base be Thailand. And my dad basically opened up a whole strip of strip clubs And it was, something that he just wanted to do. And this is the one thing that I'm so grateful for. Like, I know that a lot of people divorce, and sometimes with that comes bad mouthing, right? But my mom never bad mouthed my dad, not once. If anything, she was encouraging a relationship with me and my dad, and made it so that even when she remarried my now stepdad, we as a family would go and visit my dad every single year in Thailand. And I think that really, I can't even imagine how hard that was for my mother, because she was the one that was cheated on, and she was the one that was left. My dad couldn't be in a marriage, and she went through a lot of heartache. And the fact that she never said one bad thing about my dad it's very admirable, Okay, so I just remember getting into dancing, and my father always being so proud that his daughter danced. And yet he never saw me in a dance competition. We were just sending VHS tapes from back in the day to him in Thailand. And so we found a competition, Hong Kong. The flight for him wouldn't be very long, but for us sucked. I remember, I'll never forget this as well. Like, he calls the night before, like hours before we were going to go to the airport, and said that he just couldn't go. And that was the end of that. And I think there was like a few more times that this happened, and I just felt so, I felt so abandoned. Now I know where these feelings of abandonment come a lot, that still, are very much a part of my life that I'm currently working on, and jealousy and dating men that weren't good for me, and just this pattern, because it's like I associated that with love, but it's crazy how it's true when they say that you have a special bond when a daughter and a father, and I think I was yearning for that. And I'm just so grateful that my mom remarried such a wonderful man. But still, there was a very special bond without even any communication, because when I was a little girl, I was very shy, didn't talk. And the communication actually only started with my dad when I was able to start drinking. And I think that was part of the reason why I started drinking, because it took away all social anxiety that I had built up in my head. And then that was our bond, was alcohol, every single time until the day he died. So then my dad got in a bad accident, and he got pushed down the stairs. He was hospitalized, cracked his head open a little bit. I heard this from one of his maids in Thailand. My mom heard about it. My mom calls me, and then we were thinking that he's basically on his deathbed, he's not gonna last long. It was a slow death. After that fall, you take away my dad's speech, you take away his brain, and there's nothing to him. He is, and I was starting to see that he would be forgetting certain things, and food was no longer something he wanted. And it was weird because he just kept getting smaller and skinnier and skinnier. And then I was in Tokyo doing Love on the Floor, my live stage show, which you can see right here on my YouTube video, and Matt was there visiting me in Japan, and I get this call, and basically his maid tells me that I need to go over there as soon as possible. This could be, the last time you see your father. He's been hospitalized now for a couple weeks, and the doctors over there, they don't really know what was going on. But Thailand's a whole nother world. It's just it's different. The fact that I go into the hospital with Matt and see my dad drinking a cocktail in the hospital bed, that should tell you a little bit about how it works over there, right? So and it was really sad, because my dad couldn't walk anymore, and he could barely put two words together. And you take, like I said, you take that away from Steve, and there's really nothing. I was so lucky that Matt came to visit me in Japan, because I got this call. There was no plan of going to Thailand, but Matt was so down to come with me. I think I was so worried that my dad was gonna die any day now. When I saw them together, first of all, they look like each other. Clearly, I've got daddy issues. It was really cool just to I think that was a bonding moment between me and Matt. We were just going through this life, that part of my life, just me and him together. So leaving was the hardest thing for me to do, because I just didn't want to leave his side, but he seemed to have been getting better. So we basically say our goodbyes, right? Knowing that I probably won't see my dad alive again. And that was really emotional. I was coming off of a live stage show. Me and Matt's relationship, we were it was new in a way. Leaving him and saying goodbye, knowing that I wasn't going to see him again, it was really traumatizing. The whole thing, though, happened when I remember, I'll never forget it. I couldn't sleep the night before my dad passed away. And I got a call from his maid saying that Steve had heart failure, basically, in broken English, and you have to come back because we have to figure out your dad's estate, basically. And Even before that though, I remember my dad calling me like maybe a couple of days before that call and me ignoring it. And it was still to this day, I know that I shouldn't be feeling guilty about not picking up his phone call, because as you know, I've talked about how it's not a short conversation, right? And I was on my way to work and I didn't pick up his phone call, and then he dies, and it was the saddest thing in the world. And it's like, it's really hard to forgive myself for that. But at the end of the day, after doing Long Island Medium, which, you know, I love that stuff and I do believe in it.
I saw my symbol for where you did not get an opportunity to say goodbye.
So he called me and I didn't pick up his phone call, and that was it, basically. That's what I've been living with, kind of, is that guilt. My dad doesn't want me to harp on that, right? Like, he doesn't want me to feel bad about anything when it comes to not picking up his phone call, because at the end of the day, my dad also didn't pick up many of my phone calls. You don't ever know what's going to happen tomorrow, you know, and I've realized that the hard way. So I know it's, at this point, it's just like, you hear it all the time, but really you must live your life, like, and live it just day by day, because you just never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You really don't. The greatest, like, I would say some of the things I've learned from my dad was never to bow down. Like, don't let anybody take advantage of you. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything. So he taught me how to be outspoken in a good way. I know my dad is with me, and I know he is looking down, and I just hope, for me, I just want him to rest in peace, because life here on this planet, when he was alive, it was far from that. So, but I will love him forever. He will always be in my life. I still have so many unanswered questions, but at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. And I just need to believe that he is resting in peace and he's much happier now. So, love you, Dad.